Have you ever wondered why you feel so empty, even after a spiritual awakening? Why does it feel like you've lost all motivation, like the fire inside you just burned out and left behind silence? You thought enlightenment would make you feel powerful, driven, and full of energy. Instead, you feel stuck, disconnected, like you're floating in a quiet world that no one else understands. And here's the truth: nobody tells you you're not alone. Thousands of people go through this. They wake up to a deeper truth, and then they don't know what to do next. The drive to chase goals fades, the hunger to prove yourself disappears, and the path ahead feels empty, like there's nothing left to reach for. But don't walk away just yet, because what you're going through right now is the most important chapter of your life. If you stay with me till the end, I'll show you how this loss of motivation is not a weakness. It's the seed of your next breakthrough. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this silence inside you is actually strength in disguise. So listen closely. Right now, you're in the middle of a silent battle, a battle most people never see, because it's not happening outside you, it's happening within. You see, before your awakening, life was noisy. You were chasing things, trying to be someone, trying to win, to prove, to succeed. Your goals came from fear of not being enough, fear of being left behind, fear of failure. And that fear was the fuel behind your motivation. But now, something inside you has shifted. You've seen behind the curtain. You've realized that much of what you were chasing was an illusion, that your worth doesn't come from what you achieve, but from who you are. That's where the silence began. It's not that you became lazy. It's not that you lost discipline. It's that the noise inside your head, the pressure to be more, to chase more, suddenly went quiet. And in that quiet, you felt lost. Here's the secret most never learn. This quiet is not the end of your motivation. It's the transformation of it. You're not in a downfall. You're in a transition. And transitions always feel like death because something inside you is dying. Your old self is dying. The self that chased validation, the self that needed praise, the self that was terrified of slowing down. That version of you is being buried, and the new version is still being born. That's why everything feels confusing right now. Your mind is still running the old programs: get up, hustle, achieve, succeed. But your soul has disconnected from that system. And this disconnect creates a strange kind of suffering. You feel like you should be doing something, but nothing feels right anymore. You try to work hard, but your heart just isn't in it. You try to motivate yourself, but the words sound empty. You're not broken, you're waking up. You see, real motivation doesn't come from fear. It doesn't come from chasing. It comes from something deeper, something that cannot be rushed. Right now, you're standing at the edge of something powerful, a new kind of life, a new kind of purpose, one that isn't built on pressure, but on truth. But to walk that path, you must first pass through this silence. This silence is your cocoon. And just like the caterpillar must stop moving before it can become a butterfly, you must learn to sit in this stillness before your real wings grow. Most people run away from this phase. They distract themselves. They try to go back to their old ways. They chase temporary excitement because they're afraid of feeling lost. But not you. You've come too far. You've seen too much. You can't go back, and you're not meant to. You're meant to rise through this silence. You're meant to find a new kind of fire, one that comes from peace, not pressure, from vision, not fear. And if you can stay in this quiet space long enough, you'll hear something, a voice, soft but clear. It's the voice of your higher self. And it's not asking you to chase, it's asking you to become. That's where real motivation comes from. That's what real leaders are made of. They don't move out of panic, they move with purpose. And if you stay with me through this journey, I'll show you exactly how to reconnect with that purpose. Not the one they told you to follow, but the one you were born with. So don't give up yet. Don't label this moment as failure. This isn't the end. This is your awakening becoming real. Now let's go deeper, shall we? Something in you has already changed. You can feel it, even if you can't explain it. The old version of you, the one that used to chase everything, is gone, and you're mourning it, even if you don't realize it. There was a time when success meant something different. You wanted attention. You wanted validation. You pushed hard to prove yourself. You kept running even when you were exhausted just to feel like you were moving forward. But now, those things don't spark the same fire. And it's not because you've failed, it's because you've evolved. What you're feeling right now is grief. Yes, grief not over a person, but over an identity. You're watching the old you die, the one who was fueled by competition, the one who needed praise to feel valuable, the one who couldn't sit still without guilt. That self is gone, and letting go of it can feel like falling into a void. But understand this, the death of your old self is not a loss, it's a release. You're being freed from patterns that were never really yours, from stories you were told, from expectations that were never meant for you. And in that release, you make room for something greater. You're not here to repeat old cycles. You're here to rise, not as who you were, but as who you're meant to be. The world told you that you needed more status, more money, more approval. But your awakening has shown you the truth. You don't need more. You need meaning. This is the foundation of real power, not noise, but depth. Not performance, but presence. And yes, it feels uncomfortable, but that discomfort is the proof of transformation. You are not falling behind, you are shedding skin. And when you finally stand up again, you'll be lighter, clearer, unstoppable. That emptiness you're feeling right now, it's not the end of your journey. It's not failure. It's not a sign that you've lost your way. It's a sacred space. Most people are terrified of the void. They think something's wrong with them when motivation disappears. But this space you're standing in, it's not a hole. It's a doorway. After the old self dies, there's always a pause, a moment when nothing makes sense, a season of silence, confusion, and stillness. That's the void. But listen closely, the void isn't a punishment. It's preparation. This space is where your true identity begins to form. Not the identity the world gave you, but the one that was buried deep inside all along. This is where the noise fades, and you finally start to hear your own voice again. It may feel like you're stuck, like life has slowed down too much, like you're no longer driven. But maybe, just maybe, that's the point. Because in this stillness, you start to notice the truth. You begin to see what really matters. You realize how much of your past drive came from fear and how little came from love. That's when everything begins to shift. You stop chasing approval. You stop needing to be seen. You start searching for something deeper, something real. The void isn't your enemy. It's your invitation, an invitation to rebuild yourself, to rise with intention, to move not because you're running from something, but because you're connected to something greater. Don't rush out of this space. Stay in it. Feel it fully. Because the longer you sit with the void, the clearer your next step becomes. And when that next step comes, you won't be running blindly. You'll be walking with purpose, quiet, steady, unstoppable. The fire inside you hasn't died. It's just changed form. Before your awakening, motivation felt like a loud engine. It pushed you, it pressured you, it shouted, go faster, do more, be better. That drive came from fear, fear of failure, fear of being forgotten, fear of not being enough. But after awakening, that engine goes silent, not because you're weak, but because fear no longer controls you. And here's where many people get confused. They think they've lost their drive. They try to restart the old engine. They want that same rush of adrenaline, that same obsession with results. But that old motivation doesn't work anymore because it wasn't real power, it was survival. Now you're being called to something deeper. This new motivation, it doesn't scream, it whispers. It doesn't chase goals. It aligns with purpose. It rises slowly. Not from the outside world, but from within. You're not driven by ego anymore. You're pulled by vision, by meaning, by something that doesn't fade when the applause stops. This is a different kind of fuel. It's not fast. It's not flashy, but it never burns out. And the moment you stop searching for motivation in your old ways is the moment you begin to feel it in new ones. You get up, not because you have to, but because something inside you is ready. You speak not to impress, but because your words carry weight now. This is the shift, from noise to depth, from rush to clarity, from chasing to becoming. You haven't lost your fire. You've just outgrown the fake flames. Now you're building a fire that lasts, quiet, steady, real. Let's get one thing straight. You are not lazy. What you're feeling right now, the stillness, the lack of urgency, the absence of constant drive, it's not laziness, it's evolution. You used to push yourself every single day. You kept going, even when your body was tired, even when your mind was screaming for rest. You wore stress like a badge of honor. You believed that being busy meant being worthy. But now something inside you has shifted. You're starting to slow down, not because you've given up, but because you're waking up. You're beginning to understand that constant movement doesn't always mean progress, that rest isn't weakness, that silence isn't failure. This is a radical change, and it scares you because the world taught you that if you're not always doing something, you're falling behind. But that's a lie. Laziness is when you avoid growth. But you're not avoiding anything. You're facing the deepest parts of yourself. You're questioning old beliefs. You're reevaluating your path. You're learning to move with purpose instead of pressure. That takes strength. That takes awareness. And most of all, that takes courage. It's easy to follow the crowd. It's easy to stay addicted to hustle. It's easy to hide behind busyness. But you've chosen a harder path, a path of depth, a path of truth. So if no one's told you this yet, let me be the first. You're not falling behind. You're realigning. You're not losing your edge. You're finding your center. And that's what powerful people do. They stop. They reflect. They evolve. Because only those who are brave enough to pause are strong enough to rise with intention. You're not lazy. You're transforming. And transformation always begins in silence. You may be wondering why life feels so quiet now, why the fire that once burned inside you feels like a small, distant glow, why the constant pressure to do more suddenly feels meaningless. It's because your ego is fading. And when the ego fades, the noise fades with it. Your ego was the voice that always said, be more, prove more, show the world who you are. It gave you goals, but it also gave you anxiety. It gave you success, but it demanded sacrifice. It kept you running, but never let you rest. But now, after awakening, that voice isn't as loud anymore. You started to realize you're not your achievements, you're not your status, you're not the opinions others have of you. And as that illusion begins to fade, so does the false motivation that came with it. This isn't weakness, it's healing. You're not empty. You're clearing space, space for real purpose to take root, space for clarity to grow, space for something true, because real power doesn't come from ego, it comes from awareness. You're learning to let go of external rewards. You're no longer chasing applause. You're finally starting to listen to your inner compass, the one that doesn't scream but quietly guides. And yes, that can feel confusing, because for years the ego made you feel alive. It gave you temporary highs, but it also drained you over and over again. Now, in the absence of that noise, something deeper is rising, a voice that doesn't push you from fear, but pulls you with meaning. This is where true motivation begins, not from the outside world, but from your core. And the more you let go of ego, the more that inner strength begins to awaken, silent, focused, powerful. Everything you thought you were was just a mask. You built an identity from the outside in, from what people expected, from what the world rewarded, from what made you feel accepted, not what made you feel alive. You were chasing an image, trying to become someone that others would respect. You wore ambition like armor. You made success your shield. And every time you achieved something, you hoped it would finally make you feel whole. But it never did, because it wasn't the real you. Now that you've awakened, that false identity is crumbling. And it's painful, not because you're breaking down, but because you're breaking free. The reason you feel lost right now is simple. You no longer recognize yourself. You're no longer driven by the same goals. You don't feel the same hunger to prove anything. You don't react to the world the way you used to. And that's not failure, that's growth. The you that the world clapped for, that version was never real. It was built from survival. It was created to fit in, to impress, to belong. But now, you're stepping into who you truly are, without needing permission. And that shift can feel like darkness, but in reality it's light, because the moment you stop performing is the moment you start living. This is why your motivation feels different. Because your new self doesn't move for applause. It moves with intention. It doesn't chase image. It creates impact. It doesn't need to be seen. It needs to be real. So, if you feel like you don't know who you are anymore, that's okay. That's not the end. That's the beginning. Because only when the old identity dies can the true one finally rise. In a world that never stops moving, pausing feels unnatural. We are taught to hustle, grind, and always be on the move. But what if the real power lies in the pause? Right now, you're in that pause, that still, quiet space between what was and what will be. And instead of fighting it, you need to embrace it. This pause isn't a punishment, it's a powerful gift. In this stillness, your mind can finally rest, your soul can catch up, and your true self can emerge from the noise. When you pause, you give yourself permission to reflect, to question old beliefs, to shed limiting thoughts that no longer serve you. Growth doesn't happen in constant motion. It happens in moments like this, where you slow down enough to hear your inner voice. It's in the pause that clarity is born, that purpose becomes clear, that motivation, real deep motivation, begins to stir. So don't rush to fill this space with distractions or busyness. Resist the urge to fix the silence. Instead, sit with it, feel it, let it work its magic. The discomfort you feel is your soul stretching, your spirit growing, your mind rewiring, and when you finally move again, it won't be out of obligation or fear. It will be from a place of calm strength, focused intention, unshakable confidence. Embracing this pause is the bravest thing you can do right now, because it means you're choosing growth over comfort, truth over illusion, your real self over your old story. This pause isn't empty, it's full of potential, waiting for you to step into it. You've probably heard the phrase, follow your passion, but after awakening, you may notice that passion alone doesn't fuel you anymore. It's fleeting, unpredictable, and sometimes it feels like it's completely gone. That's because passion is often tied to excitement and emotion, things that rise and fall. Passion is a spark. Purpose is a flame. Purpose is what lasts when passion fades. When motivation disappears after spiritual awakening, it's not because you've lost your drive. It's because you're being invited to move from passion to purpose. Purpose is deeper. It's not about what excites you in the moment. It's about what gives your life meaning, even when things get hard. It's what keeps you going when passion dies down. This is where true motivation lives. When you connect to purpose, motivation becomes steady. It doesn't depend on how you feel each day. It's rooted in something bigger than you. Purpose aligns your actions with your values. It creates clarity amid confusion. It turns uncertainty into direction. And the beautiful truth is, purpose doesn't have to be something grand or complicated. It can be as simple as becoming a better version of yourself, helping others quietly, living authentically. So if you're feeling lost or unmotivated after awakening, ask yourself, what is my purpose? What meaning do I want to create in my life? Because when you find that answer, motivation stops being a chase. It becomes a natural flow, a calm, unstoppable force that carries you forward no matter what. Passion may flicker out. Purpose remains steady and strong. One of the hardest things about losing your old motivation is facing your vulnerability. When the fire dims, you feel exposed, like you're no longer in control, like you're weaker. But here's the truth. Vulnerability is strength. Real strength isn't about pretending you have it all together. It's about showing up even when you don't. It's about being honest with yourself and others. It's about admitting that you're in a place of change, uncertain, maybe even scared. That honesty creates space for growth. It breaks down walls built by fear and ego. It allows you to connect with your true self. And in that connection, motivation begins to rebuild, not from a place of force or pressure, but from authenticity and courage. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you stop wasting energy trying to look perfect or powerful. Instead, you focus that energy on healing and becoming. You realize that you don't need to have all the answers right now. You don't have to be on all the time. This openness invites clarity. It invites support. It invites the deep motivation that arises naturally when you're aligned with your truths. So don't shy away from your vulnerability. Lean into it. Own it, because it's the foundation for the kind of motivation that lasts, the kind that doesn't fade with circumstances, the kind that moves you forward even when the path isn't clear. Your vulnerability is your gateway to real power. Embrace it, and watch how it transforms your motivation from the inside out. Motivation after awakening doesn't come from outside. It doesn't come from praise, rewards, or comparison. It comes from within, from a quiet place deep inside your soul. The challenge is learning how to tap into that inner source, because after shedding old layers, you may feel disconnected, like your energy is scattered and you don't know where to start. But the key is simple: start small. You don't need grand plans or big breakthroughs right now. You need small, consistent actions that align with your new truth. Focus on tiny wins, moments where you show up for yourself, even if it's just getting out of bed on a hard day, even if it's choosing to breathe deeply instead of reacting to stress, even if it's sitting quietly and listening to your heart. These small choices build momentum. They rebuild trust between you and your own willpower. Motivation grows when you feel connected to yourself, when you honor your limits and celebrate progress no matter how small. It's a process, not a switch you flip. But every step you take inward strengthens your foundation. You become more aligned, more focused, more alive. Remember, motivation that lasts isn't loud. It's steady. It's patient. It's fueled by purpose and self-love. So look inside, or find the quiet voice waiting to guide you. Nurture it, and watch your motivation grow from the inside out. One of the biggest reasons motivation disappears after awakening is because expectations weigh you down. Expectations from others, from yourself, and from the stories you told yourself for years. You expected to feel a certain way, excited, driven, unstoppable. You expected your life to follow a clear path, full of achievements and validation. But now, things don't look like that. And when reality doesn't match expectations, motivation can vanish. Here's the hard truth. Expectations are chains. They trap your energy and blind you to what's really happening inside. The moment you release those expectations, you open the door to freedom. Freedom to move at your own pace. Freedom to redefine success on your terms. Freedom to follow your inner truth without guilt or pressure. When you stop trying to meet outside standards, your motivation returns, but it's different now. It's calmer, it's clearer, it's based on choice, not obligation. This freedom is where true motivation lives. You begin to act because it feels right. Not because you have to prove something, not because you want applause, but because your heart whispers, this is who you are. So stop fighting the way you should feel. Stop comparing your journey to others. Let go of the heavy weight of expectations. When you do, motivation doesn't disappear. It transforms. And with that transformation comes a new kind of power, one that no one can take away from you. This is the motivation of freedom, and it's waiting for you to claim it. Patience is the invisible force that most people overlook when they lose motivation. We want instant results. We want to feel inspired right now. But true transformation, the kind that comes after awakening, demands patience. You may feel frustrated with yourself for not bouncing back quickly. You may be tempted to force motivation, to push harder, to hurry the process. But that only deepens the struggle. Patience means trusting the timing of your own growth. It means understanding that healing and change don't happen overnight. They happen quietly beneath the surface in ways you can't always see. This is where most people give up. They lose faith because the progress isn't obvious. But the truth is, every moment you endure this pause, every moment you resist the urge to rush, you are growing stronger. Patience is not passive. It's an active choice to honor your process, to allow your new motivation to rise naturally, without force. When you practice patience, you stop fighting the discomfort. You stop measuring your worth by how fast you recover. Instead, you cultivate compassion for yourself. And with that compassion, your motivation returns, not as a sudden burst, but as a steady, enduring flame. So be patient, trust yourself. Remember, the strongest trees grow slowly, their roots deepening before they reach for the sky. Your motivation is growing the same way, quietly, deeply, patiently, preparing you for a powerful comeback. After awakening, motivation can feel fleeting, but there's a tool that will carry you through: self-discipline. Motivation alone isn't enough. It's like a spark that can easily fade. Discipline is the steady hand that keeps the fire burning even when excitement disappears. Self-discipline means showing up for yourself day after day, regardless of how you feel. It means choosing your purpose over momentary comfort. It means committing to your growth, even when the old drive is gone. This doesn't mean being harsh or punishing yourself. True discipline comes from respect and love for who you are becoming. It's the small habits you build that create lasting change. The daily choices to focus, to act, to keep moving forward. When you practice self-discipline, you create a container for your motivation to grow. You don't wait for feelings to catch up. You lead with action. This builds momentum, momentum that fuels confidence and clarity. And over time, that discipline becomes freedom, freedom from doubt, fear, and the old cycle of chasing motivation. So even when your motivation feels low, remember, your discipline is your power. It's the bridge between where you are now and where you want to be. Choose discipline, choose consistency, choose to honor your awakening by taking steady, intentional steps forward. What you're experiencing now is not the end of motivation, it's its evolution. The motivation you had before awakening was tied to external rewards, ego, and old identities. It was loud, urgent, and sometimes exhausting. But now motivation is becoming something deeper, quieter, more intentional, more aligned with your true self. This new motivation doesn't scream for attention. It whispers with calm confidence. It moves you steadily, not wildly. You might feel unsure, even lost at times. That's part of the process. Transformation always involves uncertainty. But if you stay present and patient, you'll notice your motivation returning in a form that's stronger and more sustainable. This is the motivation that supports real change, the motivation that honors your growth and respects your limits, the motivation that comes from purpose, self-awareness, and love. Your spiritual awakening didn't take your motivation away. It gave you the chance to build it anew, to create motivation that serves the real you, not the old story. So, welcome this new phase. Celebrate the discomfort and the pause. Trust that your motivation is evolving, becoming wiser, calmer, and more powerful. And remember, true motivation is not about force, it's about flow. It's about aligning with who you truly are. This is your new beginning, and the journey ahead is yours to create.